back to the Tea and a Butty podcast. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Erica.
And on today's show, we're going to be talking about the oldest homes in Britain.
Yes.
Yeah. So, the oldest homes in Britain.
Eh?
They're very old.
How is it that, like, this many podcasts in and we still are so awkward with intros?
This is professionalism right here.
Oh,
this is
my
what
God.
the people want to hear about our broadcasting technique.
You guys, before we start this podcast, I just have to, like, reach out to anybody else out there that
who's doing podcasts.
No, that's not it.
What?
Anybody out there who's listening who just feels so busy and exhausted and
So
just
busy,
like,
exhausted.
you guys, I can't catch up. It's just like we're literally recording this. Here's a little inside information
info
for you.
Backstage.
Backstage.
Behind the scenes.
Backstage.
I don't know. I'm not talking properly today. Forgive me, everybody.
Oh my God. Yeah. Anyway, we are we're so busy. You guys.
We're running on the backup mic here.
We're recording this just before it's going to go out because we're
original one failed.
We're having two separate conversations.
Yes. No. I'm telling everybody.
Oh my God.
We've got to get this rolling.
We're never gonna win an award in podcasting. You know this. Best podcast does not go to Tea and a Butty.
We are wonderful, and we will win the best podcasts in our listeners' hearts.
Oh my God. I just had to vent for a little bit because, I'm just frankly exhausted, and I really miss being a kid in the days when Christmas was fun. You know,
because all you had to do was run around and get exhausted. But now you have to actually do things and get exhausted.
Yeah, everything was exciting and like, you didn't have to do anything. So you didn't have to do anything except for wait for Santa.
And Santa is on his way, and I think you might be on the naughty list this year. But we won't go into that.
Anyway, so we'll get back on the topic here. The reason that this topic came about is because, I don't know, I know we've talked before about all these travel vloggers and stuff that we watch on YouTube. Yeah. And I'm always, like, surprised when they're in Britain how many, like, stately homes and just
mansions. Not McMansions, but just mansions.
Yeah, like...
Well, I guess a stately home is a mansion.
Well, to me, being American, they're like little castles, but they're not considered castles. Sometimes they are.
Yeah.
But they're just homes. You know, like, you guys know
an Englishman's house is his castle.
You guys know the ones I'm talking about, like Highclere Castle or Downton Abbey is probably one of the most famous.
Highclere Castle,
yeah. But Britain is loaded with these types of places. I mean, loaded. You guys. There's
and
so
it's like,
many.
how old are they?
Yeah.
Are they old? Or were they built 5 years ago?
No, they're mostly old. You know, over here, you look at them and they would have been built 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, they might look old, but they're not old.
Yes.
But yeah, they're all old, and I don't know, I just got to wondering, like, well, how old is the oldest
How old is
house
too
in
old?
Britain? How old is the oldest home in Britain? I think you have that bit of information,
I
don't you?
do. I have it on hand. I did some research, you know. And archaeologists have discovered Britain's earliest house dating back 11,500 years.
I mean, what is it, though? Is it
the home is so old that when it was built, Britain was still part of continental Europe. It was built before Brexit.
Is it a cave? Is it a cave or what? How can it be 11,000 years
The circular structure near Scarborough, North Yorkshire, which dates back to the Stone Age, 8,500 years BC, was found next to a former lake.
Circular structure. I mean, I'm going to need more information.
Well, it's just a circular little structure, I guess, and where,
Is it made out of stones?
Well, I
is it a cave?
The Stone Age.
Is it built into
dates back to the Stone Age.
Is it built into the ground? Is it like a little dugout? What is it?
I mean, we will never know. We'll never know exactly what it looked like, but it was a stone structure.
It's not there anymore.
Well, no, it's not like there, you know, for everyone to see. Our archaeologists dug it up, didn't they?
Oh.
It was found, they excavated it.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, as time goes along, everything gets buried,
Yeah.
as we know,
Yeah.
And this was, they've discovered the earliest house, and it must have been a dwelling.
Of course, it's in Yorkshire. Like, why are the oldest things in Britain always up in Yorkshire?
Because it was, it was built when it was still part of continental Europe. So, like Britain was still connected.
Yeah.
And that's a long time ago.
Well, yeah, 11,000 years.
I mean, structures were made of stone back then, So
Yeah.
it was like a circular dwelling.
Okay.
That, I imagine like maybe one or two people lived in,
Okay, yeah. I wasn't getting the context. Age, hello.
The Stone Age, yeah. And before, BC, so that's before Christ.
Okay, so
that was before the Romans.
Well, yeah.
Well, actually, no, it wasn't before the Romans. It was just at the end of the Roman Empire, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you know your history,
If you know your history, you know we're wrong.
The Roman era was like after the Stone Age.
Okay. Anywho.
It was like the first Britons or the first Neanderthals or whatever,
Anyway, the old homes that are not quite that old, date back to when?
Well, the oldest continuously inhabited house in Britain is Salford Manor, which is near Bristol in Somerset, and that is believed to date from before 1150.
Wow, continuously inhabited.
Probably 1148, yeah, so people have lived in that house since then.
Oh my god, that is awesome!
Salford Manor was built on an estate near Bristol in Somerset that was owned by the Bishop of Coutances.
You know that show that they do in Britain, where they
House history, yeah.
A House Through Time.
House Through Time, yeah.
Why did they should do that house?
Well, that's a lot of history right there.
Yeah, I want to know. They could make an entire series based on that house.
When they do a history of like houses, it's usually from maybe the 1700s.
Yeah, usually.
And then, they skip a few generations of people living there.
They just go, yeah, these were boring people.
But this guy and this woman,
Yeah. They could do a whole series on this house. 1150.
It was probably built in 1148.
Jeez.
Followed by Geoffrey de Montbray and then the Earl of Gloucester. Over the period of 1558 to 1603, there were several owners of the manor before it fell into the hands of the Duke of Chandos until the late 18th century. The place came into the possession of the Flower family up to the late 19th century when it was taken over by farmers Mrs. Mary Roche and George John Roche.
Hey, I think I have some flowers in my family. Seriously, yeah. In my ancestry.
The Flower family. Maybe they were just flowers. The manor fell into disrepair until the early 1940s, when it became a headquarters for the Salford Boy Scouts and was later lived in spasmodically by various owners during the 20th century.
Yeah, that's what happened to all these big houses, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, by the 20th century, people were ignoring them because, there was wars on and no one cared about that stuff anymore, So it was just like, that's a big house, we'll just move our Boy Scout brigade in there.
Next week.
Or we'll turn it into a hospital or whatever.
Yeah. Next week, you guys, we're going to talk about Christmas movies because it's like Christmas week.
Yeah.
And we recently were watching this film on Netflix that I don't know, was it new this year? The one about Brooke Shields moving into a
castle in Scotland, yeah. A castle for Christmas.
But that's what happens, isn't it? These houses are too big for a person or a family to keep up with
I mean,
in modern
they're
times.
Absolutely expensive. Unless you've got Jeff Bezos money, you're not going to be able to live there alone.
And actually,
or keep it up by yourself.
Actually, it's not even totally about the size of the house, is it? It's the age of the house. It's in order to keep it from crumbling down around you, it costs an exorbitant amount of money.
I know. I'd love to know how much it would cost a year to upkeep that house.
To run it, yeah.
If breakdown of, like, heating bills and everything like that, but just, like, the repair.
Yeah.
And everything, because, there's going to be a leaky roof in the east wing.
But it makes you wonder, like...
The masonry's going to be crumbling around this bit, and, we'll have to restore that.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, because in this A Castle for Christmas or whatever, I think it was new on Netflix this year, Brooke Shields is an American writer.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder,
she's got quite a large following, she's kind of like, kind of like a J.K. Rowling in romance.
Diana Gabaldon,
you could say, Diana Gabaldon.
But it makes me wonder, could an American celebrity who lives in a McMansion over here afford to upkeep a house in Britain?
Considering the tax and everything, probably not. It's probably cheaper over here to live in one.
Yeah. I mean, and that's only because they're new. That's only because those homes are new.
They're new and they can last a little bit longer.
Yeah. Wow.
But after the spasmodic ownership, a couple called the Winds purchased it in 1997 and completely renovated the interior to turn it into a comfortable home. And then Country Life featured it as the oldest house in Britain. As the oldest continually inhabited house. And that spurred the husband, oh wow, I didn't know I lived in something that was so old.
Oh, really?
They didn't know. They didn't know. They thought it was just it was built in the they believed it was from maybe it's a cottage from the 1800s or something.
Oh, you know why?
But they were like, actually, no, it's 1150 this was built, or whatever, and they're like, that's,
Because what happens
before Tudor times.
They add on and they remodel and stuff over the years, and so, very little of the original
I don't have a picture. I don't have any pictures up on the thing. I've just got text up.
I mean, they couldn't see anyway.
And you couldn't see anyway. Yeah, but I mean, Erica hasn't seen it either.
No. We'll all have to look them up in a minute after this podcast is over. Saltford Manor, we're talking about. But very little of the original house a lot of the time is left by the time you get to the 1900s, 2000s, whatever. It's they're all, they seem to all be from the Tudor era.
Tudor era, it's the earliest.
Yeah.
And most of these, like Richard III and everything like that, that's pretty much where they start kind of before that it's they were either destroyed or whatever, by time or fires or whatever, because, people built in wood back then. And mud.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Most structures were built with wood. So it's just all it took was a little fire and it was gone, And termites. Do you guys have termites in Britain?
I mean, woodworm and stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps the most intriguing feature of Saltford Manor is the series of medieval wall paintings that was accidentally discovered by the Saltford Boy Scouts in the early 1940s when the house was used as their headquarters.
That's so cool.
Reportedly, the Scouts damaged some wall plaster and found a wall painting beneath it. The paintings represent the Madonna and Child, and a Wheel of Fortune.
Wheel of Fortune!
Yeah, the Wheel of Fortune, Pat Sajak. He was under all that plaster all those years, and we never knew.
He's been around a long time.
Yeah. Today, they are recognised as the oldest domestic wall paintings in England.
Wow. We're totally going to this place.
And the Winds sold the house for about $1.7 million in 2010. So.
God, is that all?
Is that all? I mean, they probably
purchased it. The oldest house in Britain.
They probably purchased it for $200,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe not even that.
Still, you would think that just having the title of the oldest house in Britain, you could be able to sell it for a lot more than that.
The next one on my list is the Manor in Hemmingford Gray, Cambridgeshire.
Yes,
and this one was also built in the 1150s.
Oh my God.
The Manor is also one of the oldest continuously inhabited houses in Britain, and much of the original house remains intact despite various changes over the last 900 years.
Oh my God. Anytime I hear 900 years, it's just unbelievable.
The manor house was started by Payne Osmondson, a tenant of the wealthy De Vere family, who were given huge grants of land by William the Conqueror.
Wow.
William the Conqueror, eh? Coming over here and giving land, and it's grants of land.
It's just called the manor.
The manor, yeah.
The manor.
Including the land at Hemmingford Gray. The house was modernised in Tudor times and again in the 18th century. So
Tudor times.
Yeah.
Those Tudors.
Those Tudors modernising, and then in the 18th century they modernised.
Yeah.
The current owner, Diana Boston, said, "The claim to fame of this house is that it was built as someone's home, and it has continued to be someone's home ever since."
That is so cool.
The feeling of everyone when they come in here is it must be an, ecclesiastical building,
Yeah.
which is like, it's like a castle. It's
Yeah,
like built for grander schemes, But of course, that is the way the Normans built. They didn't know how to build any other way.
Yeah.
And the next...
that is so cool.
I mean, all these I've found, most of them I found were built in like 1150. Those are like the oldest ones,
That's so crazy. But the fact that somebody's been living, and that's what keeps them from crumbling.
Someone's been living in it and chipping away and putting little bits of plaster up.
Yeah. They continuously are taking care of it, and, they have to, or it'll, fall down on their heads.
The next one is the Jew's House in Lincoln. Built around 1150, the Jew's House is one of the earliest extant townhouses in England. It lies on Steep Hill in Lincoln and was associated with the thriving Jewish community in medieval Lincoln.
Where's Lincoln?
In Lincolnshire.
Ha.
It is!
Where is Lincoln?
It's in England.
Oh my God.
It's on the East Coast.
East Coast.
Yeah. It's like just before Yorkshire. Just before the East Riding of Yorkshire.
Oh, okay.
So it's quite, it's like Midland North.
Oh, Lincolnshire. That's where they lived in My Mad Fat Diary.
Yes, Lincolnshire. Yes, that's where they lived.
Okay,
and it's also home to a famous sausage.
Lincolnshire.
The Lincolnshire sausage.
Okay.
It was associated with the thriving Jewish community in medieval Lincoln, which is why it's called the Jew's House, I guess.
Yeah.
The Jew's House was supposedly seized from a Jewish owner during a pogrom stoked up by the case of Little St. Hugh of Lincoln in 1255. The building originally consisted of a hall at first floor level with service and storage spaces at ground level. And then that's what you said, the first floor is the ground for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
The surviving original facade includes the elaborately carved doorway, the remains of 2 Romanesque double-arch windows, and much of the stonework on the upper story. The chimney breast rising over the arch above the front door served the fireplace on the upper floor. The building has remained continuously occupied to the present day and is currently used as a restaurant.
Oh.
So you can go eat
there.
So
you can go there. No, that was going to be my other question was, can you visit these places since people live there?
I don't know if Salford Manor, I didn't do too much research. I just saw like a blog post.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm imagining someone wants to get hold of it, like the National Trust or something, to make it like, oh yes, the oldest house in Britain. The manor, obviously, they can operate. People who come in there because people expect it to be. Oh, it's grand, but it's just a little house,
Yeah.
Just a little house.
Because people, and when I say people, I mean me, want to go see these old places when they go to Britain. But the thing is these old places, they don't come up on, like, if you Google, like, sites
these are kind of,
places to see in Britain, these places aren't really good. They're not going to come up.
No.
But you're just going to be driving past them maybe one day, and it's just like, boom, some place from the 1100s is just there on the side of the road.
On the side of the road, neglected, waiting for you to move in. My little house.
It's absurd. It's completely crazy.
It's just a castle. And speaking of castles, Berkeley Castle in Gloucestershire. It's the oldest property in Britain to remain in the hands of the same family, except for a brief period of royal ownership by the Tudors. Because, the Tudors, they were seizing everything at that time. Henry VIII and Henry VII, they were like, that's my land,
No, like with Leeds Castle, for instance. Yeah. They were just like, oh, we're going to be passing through from wherever, going to wherever, and we need a place to stay.
Yes.
And I've got all the king's horses and all the king's men,
All my entourage is coming with me.
Yeah.
And so we need a bed for the night.
And so we're going to buy this. So
We'll just buy this castle and we'll just have it and then we'll leave it in the morning and then no one will come and I'll give it to someone.
Yeah.
That's usually what Henry VIII did. I'll just give it to some guy who I like. They
just bought it because they were going to need to stay there for a few days on route to wherever.
On route to wherever, yeah.
And that's it. We'll have this place,
It wasn't even, it remains in Berkeley Castle, a brief period of royal ownership by the Tudors. You can imagine it was just a case of, the royals came there and said, well, this is our house now.
Yeah.
These few months. and we own it because I'm the king, and that's it.
And so what? Then they must have, when they decided they didn't want to have it anymore or whatever, they must have just gone, oh, well, this is your ancestral home, so we'll give it back to you guys?
Well, yes.
Or we'll sell it back to you, maybe?
Maybe
Or
so,
would they
yes.
have just given it to them?
Maybe. I don't know.
We don't know.
Do more research on that. The original fortification is a Motte and Bailey, was begun by William Fitzosborne in 1067, but the oldest surviving buildings and the occupation by the Berkeley family began in the 1150s. The castle keep was built around 1153 to 56, probably on the site of the former Motte. Much of the rest of the castle is 14th century.
Okay.
In
14th century, much more recent.
In 1327, when King Edward II was deposed from the throne, he was brought to Berkeley Castle and held prisoner there for 5 months. He was reputedly murdered there, the popular story being that a red-hot poker was inserted into his bottom to burn out his internal organs without leaving a visible mark on his body.
Oh my god, lovely.
The cell where he is supposed to have been imprisoned and murdered can still be seen. So yeah, that's a lovely story of Berkeley Castle.
Let's go see that, shall we? Yeah, you keep saying Berkeley, but just for Americans listening, it's Berkeley.
Berkeley. Yeah, it might be Berkeley Castle, I don't know, They might start calling it that,
Might they?
I mean, yeah, because American pronunciations are it's kind of interchangeable now. I see British people type in MOM when they mean MUM,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, it's not mom. You're not in some 2 guys, a girl, and a pizza place sitcom right now.
What? Oh, that was very current.
Yes, very
current reference there. Well done, Dominic.
Yes. It's the most up-to-date cultural reference I have. The next one we have is Fifield Hall in Essex, your favourite county in England.
Fifield Hall, okay.
Yeah. The dating of tree rings in the timbers used to construct Fifield Hall established that they have been felled during the period of 1167 to 85. So they can date the tree rings, they cut them open, they go, 1167, wow.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is so
Making
cool.
it the earliest inhabited domestic timber frame structure in Britain.
Wow, and it's still there.
Oh, yes. The manor near Chipping Ongar in Essex. Chipping Ongar! Also features 1 oak post in the entrance hall that was carbon dated to between AD 880 and 985, before the Norman conquest.
So what, then?
So this was before Alfred the Great times.
So, wait. So this is...
Before William the Conqueror times, I should say.
So then this place is older than the other place?
No, because...
They just cut the tree
one oak post in the entrance hall.
Yeah.
Was carbon dated. 1 oak post, so they just planted that there.
But where did they get... I mean...
Where did they get... They
got a tree from 200 years previous and just made it a post and dragged it into this house. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, that may have been lying there for years. I mean, 1167, they might,
Just go get that 200
It was carbon dated between AD 880 and 985.
Yeah.
And then 1167 to 85, it was like, most of the tree rings,
Also, I have another question before you continue. I noticed, you have castle, hall, manor. Do we know what the difference is? Because essentially these are all probably just big, to Americans, like, mansions, right?
Yeah.
Or they
like
all
Blickling
kind of
Hall
maybe even
and
look
all
like...
this kind of stuff, where Anne Boleyn lived. It's kind of like, they're like, mostly like...
Is it just
grand.
a name?
It's just a name, usually.
Okay, so it doesn't have anything
It has a large hall in it, which...
You think that's where it comes from?
Yeah, I think so. There's a large, hall.
Because remember that podcast we did about... What was it?
A castle, I think, has
the
fortifications.
Okay.
Hall, it's just a hall. It's like it was built around a hall.
It might be like a long style,
yeah, thing.
You're just repeating me now.
No, it's a long style. It's just kind of like, and the manor house is kind of like, it's a design. It's the design of it.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yes.
But we don't know specifically what the design is that classifies it a manor.
I mean, yes.
Or
you can.
if anybody listening knows, let us know.
Yeah. We're not know-it-alls.
We're not experts on this topic. But I am interested though, because there's got to be some sort of like specifications that make it, be called a castle. Or I think you're right about the castle.
It's fortifications that make it a castle.
Yeah.
Turrets and everything like that,
Yeah, but as far as like hall or manor or whatever, what I was referring to is that the names of the houses that or whatever it was, means you live on a hill or remember?
Oh yes.
What we were talking about.
The street names.
Yeah, in some podcasts.
It's like
what makes the property more valuable than others? Yeah.
It was like, if you live on Hill.
Yeah.
Hill Street or whatever, then it's you live on a hill and it's like
it's
more desirable.
Yeah. And
if it's
so I just
court, then
Right. So I just wondered if it was something similar with the names of these
No,
places.
it's design differences, most definitely.
Yeah.
Current owner Willie White
said
most of the roof beams were blackened by fire and soot. The building would have been one big hall open to the rafters, with a mud floor, in the middle of which they would have built a bonfire, with the smoke wandering through a hole in the roof.
Oh my God.
It's lovely to think that the house was built without planning permission or building regulations, and it's still here 1,000 years on.
Yeah, wow.
So there you go, the hall. It was just large, dwelling, the hall dwelling, where they built a bonfire and they kept warm and,
It was just a
dry,
big,
open thing. And then, the Tudors modernized it by putting a roof on it and, building a fireplace or whatever, and then it just became, it's so-and-so hall.
I guess it's sort of similar to, although, this is a place where people lived, but it's sort of similar to, a dance hall or an events hall. You know what I mean? It's a big open place, I guess?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just making stuff up.
The hall was remodeled between 1391 and 1416, but unusually it was done in the archaic style of the late 1100s. Rather than in contemporary style. So someone was like, oh yes, we got to go back to the 1100s with this design.
Yeah.
Being remodeled, and people were just like, you're not very progressive, are you? It's like Artex on the roof and all that, 1980s style.
Well, I don't know. To me, it's more like we want to keep this house to its period. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
to its original period. This is how it would have looked.
And if they've carbon dated one post, then...
Yeah.
Maybe it was originally from 880, whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
It was probably done by the second Lord Scrope of Massam to lend it an air of antiquity to his baronial manor. To lend oh yes, this is very old. Now it's very old.
Yeah, that's funny.
The headless body of the third Lord Scrope is buried in the local churchyard. He was beheaded by Henry V in 1415, and the king briefly took possession of the manor. Oh, there you go. He fell out of favour, and the king was just like, "Yeah, I'll take that."
But there they called it a manor there. So
yeah.
Maybe they're interchangeable. Maybe it's just maybe
it was a manor. Then they restored it to it's actually a hall.
Yeah.
It's not Blickling Manor, it's Blickling Hall,
Yeah.
I'm referring to the residents of Anne Boleyn.
Yeah.
Which I'm, it's not on this list. This was the last one on the list, so.
It's funny because if you think people have always been interested in antiques or in we want a property that's old, not new. And because that's
in 1315 they were just oh, well, I prefer something from the 1150s, actually.
No, I think it probably has to do with showing that you've had money in your family for that long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
oh yeah.
Yeah, you're not new money. It's this is an old house. It's been in my family for centuries. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. Rather than over here, people want a new house. They don't want an old house that other people have lived in. Gross. I remember ages ago when the this is so ridiculous, but ages ago when the Real Housewives of New Jersey just started, seeing they used to play this like sound bite from Teresa Giudice all the time, where she was just like, I don't want to live in a house that other people have lived in. That's gross, and it's just like, yeah, I think
she doesn't realize,
Well, it sounds stupid, but I think a lot of Americans have that attitude. Like,
I want to build my own house.
Yeah,
and I'd be the first one to live in it.
Yeah, I want a new build.
But it's like, no.
Yeah, I'd much rather have something with history. Like, much, much, much rather have something with history. I like
to live in a house that Henry V in 1415 briefly took possession of.
Yeah.
And beheaded the previous owner,
God, yeah.
Because he just pissed him off somehow.
Oh, no, I don't know if I want to live where someone was beheaded or had
no, he wasn't beheaded there. It's in the local churchyard. His headless body
was
beheaded. Was buried.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing his head was on a spike somewhere.
Yeah, I guess
as a warning to all the others.
I also don't want to live, like, somewhere
Lord
where
Scrub, that Lord Scrub, never liked that guy. We need to behead him.
Where the, someone's had a red hot poker shoved up their bum.
Edward II, that was the king. That was the deposed king.
Oh, no.
And you're staying in that room when we go there.
You would put me in that room. You'd be like, no, this is the room you have to stay in.
The room you have to stay in because people can still, you might be able to get some good ghost stories. The screams of Edward II.
All right.
Keep you warm at night.
I think we're out of time, but quickly, let's just say all of these places again, so if anybody wants to look them up and see what they actually look like. They were Salford Manor. The Manor at Hemmingford Gray in Cambridgeshire. The Manor.
Manor. The Jew's House in Lincoln.
Okay, yeah.
And Berkeley or Berkeley Castle in Gloucestershire. And then Fifield Hall in Essex.
Fifield. That's such an odd name.
F-Y Field.
Yeah. Yeah, all one word. Yeah.
But
that's really interesting.
Yes.
And now I want to see these places.
Yes. We're going to stay at Berkeley Castle.
And the thing is...
In the cell.
And the thing is this was what, like 5?
5,
I mean, we could easily do like probably 10 more podcasts.
We could do a lot more on this.
There's just so many of these places, you guys, and as Americans who are interested in this kind of like,
it's all about the history. You know what I mean?
It just really like it blows my mind to think how many of these places are just sitting out there, and somebody lives in them, or maybe they're just known about in the little town that they're in or whatever, because we even visited in the town you're from in Wales, we even visited a little house there, and it was quite old as far as I can remember. And it wasn't a big deal or anything, but it was really pretty inside, and it was quite cool. And
what little house?
Park Howard.
Oh!
That was a house, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like a...
I mean, at some point it was a house. Now it's kind of like a museum, wasn't it?
It's kind of like a museum, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, what little house? What little house did I go in? What was that real? I don't know when that's from, Park Howard, actually.
Yeah. But, I mean, these places exist just literally in probably every town, I would say.
Yes.
Probably every single town.
Usually it's like the remains of a castle and whatever, but it's,
But there's so many that are still standing, though. Yeah. There's so many. I mean, you can drive around easily and see ruins of places around, and those are cool, too, but places that, like the places on these lists that have been continuously inhabited, I mean, that is awesome.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway... we must wrap this up.
We have to have an awkward end because we had an awkward start.
Yes.
So there we go.
Perfect. Come full circle.
Thank you guys so much, as always, for tuning in. We really appreciate your support. Be sure to check us out on social media. I think I forgot to say that in both episodes last week.
Yeah, we just come back, you see. We're new at this.
We are at Butty, TEABUTTY. On Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And we'll talk to you next time.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.